feeling when you're trying to say something in another language. It's like your brain is stuck just in slow motion. You understand perfectly well, but the words just won't come out smoothly. It's like there's I don't know, a translator jammed in your mental gears.
Oh, yeah, that's a really common bottleneck for language learners, definitely. You grasp the concepts, sure, but expressing those thoughts fluidly in the new language, well, it feels like a real struggle sometimes.
Right. Well, today we're diving deep into exactly that. We're exploring a really compelling personal journey. The transition from primarily thinking in one language, Spanish in this case, to genuinely thinking in English.
Yeah.
Our source for this deep dive is this incredibly detailed firsthand account of someone who tackled this very challenge, head on.
And this isn't just a quick overview, right? It's an in-depth look at years of pretty dedicated effort. We see the specific obstacles they hit and the really practical strategies this person used to essentially, well, rewire their brain. We've got access to their personal reflections, their moments of frustration, which I think are really relatable, and those pivotal aha moments that really push their progress forward.
And for you, the learner, listening in, whether you're grappling with a new language or maybe a complex academic subject, or really any field where that mental processing is key, this deep dive is packed with value.
Definitely.
We're pulling out the most impactful insights and, crucially, the actionable methods from this experience. We're sort of offering you a shortcut, maybe, to understanding how to move beyond simply knowing something to truly thinking in it.
Okay, let's get into this.
Yeah.
So let's begin with the core challenge. The individual in our source, they grew up bilingual, but Spanish was their dominant language, their first language.
Right.
And even with years of formal English classes and actually living in an English-speaking environment like the U.S., there was this fundamental hurdle that just kept persisting.
They realized they were constantly running this internal translation process. Is that it?
Exactly, even for just everyday stuff. We'll take the simple question, how was your weekend? Instead of just, an immediate English response, their brain would first think up an answer in Spanish.
Oh.
And then translate it pretty much word by word into English.
And that sounds minor, maybe, but it actually had a big impact.
Oh, absolutely. A significant impact. It noticeably slowed down their conversational pace, for one. And the sheer mental energy it took, it made just talking feel draining, and they often missed chances to jump into the conversation because they were still back there, translating.
Right, that frustrating lag, that delay between understanding and actually responding naturally.
Yeah.
And the real turning point, the aha moment, happened in college classes, apparently.
It did. They saw their classmates answering professors' questions really quickly, spontaneously, while they were still stuck in that translation loop, just processing.
And wasn't there a friend involved, too?
Yes, a pivotal moment with a friend, Mia. She just pointed it out directly.
What did she say?
Simply, you always think in Spanish first. Straightforward, maybe a bit blunt, but it really crystallized the problem for them.
Okay. So the big question became, how do you actually make that shift? From translating to genuine thought in English.
Exactly. And our source details a fascinating step-by-step strategy. The first part focused on their immediate surroundings.
Immersing themselves.
Consciously immersing themselves in English, yeah. Initially, even living in the U.S., their daily environment still leaned heavily Spanish.
Like their phone.
Phone settings, yeah. Shows on Netflix, mostly Spanish. Even their grocery lists, all in Spanish.
So the deliberate shift was pretty comprehensive then.
Very. They switched their phone language to English, started watching shows without subtitles, which is a big step.
Oh, yeah.
Actively listened to English podcasts, set digital reminders in English. It was about making English the default in their immediate, everyday world.
So what's the principle there? Just forcing exposure?
Essentially, yeah. It forces your brain to constantly make those connections in English. It shifts it from being this conscious, effortful thing to something more automatic. Kind of like how kids pick up their first language, just by being surrounded by it.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the next strategy is something you can do anywhere, right? Talking to yourself in English.
Yeah.
That internal voice.
Exactly, that internal monologue we all have. This involved consciously narrating their daily activities, but in English, silently in their head.
Like, I'm going to make coffee now.
Simple things like that. I need to finish this report, or I'm going to make lunch. Just constant low-level narration.
And our source says that wasn't easy at first. It took concentration.
Right. It required real focus, a conscious effort to switch that internal voiceover. But gradually, over time, it became much more natural. It started becoming the default way they process their thoughts.
What's the real value in doing that? Just practice.
Well, yes, practice, but it's more than that. By consistently thinking aloud in English to yourself, you're actively using sentence structures, vocabulary, all in a totally low-pressure situation.
No audience.
Exactly. No fear of mistakes. You're just strengthening those neural pathways without needing to actually speak to anyone.
Interesting. Okay, another hurdle they mentioned was the complexity of their Spanish thoughts. Translating those directly didn't work well.
Right. This highlights something crucial about language learning. It's not just about swapping words. It's
Yeah.
about understanding how ideas are typically structured in that language. So directly translating a complex Spanish sentence often ended up sounding awkward or even nonsensical in English.
So the fix was,
The solution was to consciously, deliberately think in simple English sentences first.
gotcha, building blocks.
Exactly. Our source gives an example. Instead of some elaborate Spanish phrase with lots of clauses, they'd consciously think something simple like, I hope it doesn't rain later because I need to go to the store.
Simple, direct, standard English structure.
Precisely. The core idea is building a solid foundation with those fundamental sentence structures in your actual thought process. Master the simple stuff first, and then the more complex thought patterns can emerge later.
Okay. Then they added another exercise, this one involving the physical world, describing what they saw.
Yeah, actively engaging with their surroundings. This meant verbally describing, even just quietly to themselves, what was around them in English.
So if they were in a library,
They might think or whisper, the student is reading, the bookshelf is full, it is quiet here. Simple observations, direct connections.
and like the internal narration, this started off needing effort but became more automatic.
Yes, same pattern. It's about forging that direct link between what you see and the English words for it, bypassing the need to go via Spanish first.
How does that active observation help specifically? Just more vocabulary practice.
It's partly vocabulary, but it's more about creating that immediate connection, seeing an object or action and having the English word pop into your head directly without that translation step. It strengthens the association.
Okay, now let's talk about mistakes. That's a huge barrier for lots of learners, isn't it? The fear of messing up.
Oh, absolutely. A very common impediment, that anxiety about sounding wrong or using bad grammar, it can really make people hesitate.
Yeah, you just clam up.
Exactly. And that stops you from practicing, which is how you actually improve. Our source definitely struggled with this, constantly worrying about grammar when they spoke.
If something changed there.
Yeah, a really valuable insight came from an English professor
Oh,
who pointed out that even native speakers make grammatical errors all the time in casual speech.
right. Like the example they gave me and my friend went to the store.
Exactly. Technically wrong, but you hear native speakers say things like that constantly.
So what was the impact of realizing that?
It was incredibly liberating, apparently. It shifted their focus away from striving for this impossible perfection towards just prioritizing clear communication, getting the message across.
And the result was more confidence.
A noticeable increase in confidence, yeah. By letting go of that intense focus on flawless grammar, they just felt more comfortable speaking.
And, ironically, probably started making fewer mistakes because they were practicing more.
Very likely. That shift in focus is so important. Fluency often develops just through using the language, engaging consistently. You create more chances for your brain to learn and sort of self-correct over time.
Okay, so after several months of putting all these strategies into practice, there was a breakthrough moment, a big moment.
Yes, a real turning point. It happened in one of their university classes.
What happened?
They spontaneously answered a professor's question. And the key thing was there was no conscious translation happening in their head.
Wow.
It was just a completely natural, automatic response in English.
Just came out. Imagine that feeling, going from that deliberate, translated response to something just intuitive. That must have felt amazing.
Incredibly validating, I'd imagine. A real sign of progress, a substantial breakthrough.
But the journey wasn't over.
No, our source really emphasizes that. The learning didn't stop there. Consistent practice, actively pushing their boundaries that remained crucial.
Like with preparing a presentation. That was another challenge.
Yes, a big one. They made a conscious decision to write and rehearse the whole thing directly in English.
Deliberately not drafting it in Spanish first and then translating.
Exactly, resisting that urge, which, for a complex task like a presentation, takes real discipline. It required them to organize and structure all their thoughts directly in English from the start.
And how did that go, the actual presentation?
It was another breakthrough. They described speaking without even consciously thinking about Spanish. The words just flowed naturally.
That's
It
fantastic.
really underscored that realization. Learning a language, truly learning it, is fundamentally about changing how you think.
Yeah, rewiring those patterns.
Exactly. This experience showed that all those earlier efforts were paying off, integrating English more deeply into their cognitive processes, even for complex communication.
But it wasn't always smooth sailing, right? They mentioned sometimes slipping back.
Right. And I think this is important for listeners to hear. Our source mentions occasionally reverting to Spanish thought patterns, especially when tired or stressed.
Which is normal.
Totally normal. Language habits are deep-rooted. It's natural for the brain to default to its most familiar path under pressure, cognitive load.
So the key is not to get discouraged.
Exactly. Acknowledge it, don't beat yourself up, and just gently redirect your thinking back to English.
They also kept up some ongoing strategies.
Definitely. Continuous improvement was key, like keeping that notebook for unfamiliar words and actually reviewing them. And dealing with fast native speakers, that's a common challenge. Their approach shifted to focusing on the overall context, the gist of it,
Right.
rather than trying to catch every single word. Like the example, understanding "wanna grab a bite" without analyzing the literal meaning. You get the meaning from context.
That shows a more natural kind of comprehension, doesn't it? Less analytical,
Yeah.
more intuitive.
It really does. It's a move towards more efficient listening, relying on context, just like native speakers do.
And then there was that moment of knowing. Sounds significant.
It was small, maybe, but felt huge. Realizing they'd written an entire text message in English without consciously thinking about Spanish at all.
Just happened automatically.
Yeah, that spontaneous production, especially in writing, without conscious translation, that's a powerful sign of deep automaticity. It suggests the brain really has built those direct pathways for thought and expression in English.
Okay, so they reached this major milestone. But they didn't just stop there, right?
Yeah,
How did they keep the momentum going?
good question. Maintaining progress definitely requires ongoing effort. Our source established a daily routine specifically designed to keep reinforcing English thinking.
What did that look like?
Things like starting the day by mentally narrating their morning routine in English, getting up now, need coffee,
Okay.
writing a short English journal entry before bed, even just speaking aloud in English when they were alone, maybe describing their room or what they were doing.
Do those little daily habits really make a long-term difference?
Absolutely. These consistent, even brief moments of engagement help solidify those neural connections for English thinking throughout the day. They keep reinforcing the new patterns.
They also kept seeking out active use, didn't they? Like with friends.
Yeah, proactively. Challenging Spanish-speaking friends to chat in English sometimes, and consciously trying to work through stressful situations or problems in English in their head.
That last one sounds tough,
Yeah.
but really effective. Using English for problem solving.
Exactly. It elevates English beyond just social chat. It integrates it into a higher level thinking, reasoning, planning, even emotional processing.
And then came the dream. Dreaming in English. That feels like the ultimate sign, doesn't it?
It often signifies a very high level of integration. Yeah, it suggests the language has become active even in subconscious thought, a really deep level of that neural rewiring we talked about.
Wow. So having gone through all this, they started helping others, like Sophia from Colombia.
Naturally, yeah. Sharing their own experiences, the struggles, the strategies that worked, it proved incredibly helpful for others facing the same hurdle.
There's real power in that shared experience, isn't there? Knowing someone else got through it.
Immense value. Practical lived experience is often more useful than just textbook advice. These were strategies that were personally tested and worked. That offers real insight and encouragement.
And helping others led to another realization about language shaping perspective.
Yes, a broader understanding. That language isn't just a tool, it can actually influence how you see things. They shared an example of spontaneously thinking in English during a business meeting, even using an idiomatic phrase naturally without any pre-translation.
How does using idioms like that show a shift in perspective?
It suggests a deeper integration. The language isn't just for conveying facts anymore. It's starting to shape how they perceive and process information, leading to more natural, culturally nuanced ways of expressing ideas.
Then came the internship, which pushed things further. Professional language.
Right. Real-world application. It exposed them to industry-specific jargon, more complex idioms, the nuances of professional communication. They had to actively learn that stuff.
And joining an English club helped too.
Hmm.
Community support.
Yeah, finding that supportive community was important. Practicing, getting feedback, just being around others learning it fosters confidence and continued growth.
Importantly, our source stressed that thinking in English didn't mean losing their Spanish identity.
Not at all. It was about embracing bilingualism,
Yeah.
recognizing the value of having two ways of thinking, two ways of expressing themselves. It's an asset.
They even led a project team using English for everything.
Yeah, for internal chats, client presentations, showcasing that seamless integration in a professional setting. It really highlights the power of bilingualism, more flexibility, broader skills, different perspectives.
And even with all this success, they still had moments of reflection, still caught themselves thinking in Spanish sometimes.
Yes, and they normalize that. Occasional slips are part of the journey. It shows healthy self-awareness. And they kept using that notebook for new phrases, showing a commitment to ongoing learning.
It wasn't just about language, was it? It was personal growth, too.
Definitely. This whole transformation was seen as significant personal evolution. It built patience, resilience, the courage to step outside the comfort zone.
And that confidence opened doors.
Naturally, new opportunities started appearing. The process of learning the language mirrored that broader personal growth, perseverance, adaptability, embracing challenges, skills that go way beyond just language.
And this led to inspiring others more formally.
Yeah, the ripple effect. Engaging with international students facing the same struggles, getting invited to networking events because of their communication skills, even getting job offers specifically because they could communicate clearly and confidently in English.
Wow.
Volunteering at a bilingual education booth, connecting with people like Daniel from Honduras, it just reinforced the impact their journey could have.
It shows how mastering a language can really expand your world, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It enables connections, allows you to support others, and creates so many more opportunities, personally and professionally.
And then they brought it full circle by teaching others, leading workshops.
Yes, leading a workshop series at their universities specifically on thinking in English, helping students like Anna, Ahmed, Lucia.
Using the same kinds of practical exercises they use themselves.
Exactly. Simple things like describing everyday objects in English. They even explored creative writing poems, short stories, as a way to deepen that connection with the language.
That's a lovely way to put it.
Yeah.
And they found a balance. Spanish for the heart, English for aspirations.
Beautifully put, wasn't it? Finding harmony between the two. It really showcases the transformative power of learning and the satisfaction of using your own success to empower others.
Okay, so let's distill this down for you, the learner. What are the key actionable takeaways from this whole journey? The source gives tons of tips.
Yeah, lots of concrete advice, starting with the basics. Immerse yourself actively. Change device languages. Consume English media shows, podcasts, social media. Make it unavoidable.
And that self-talk.
Definitely. Practice that internal narration throughout the day. Keep an English journal. Writing helps process thoughts. Read a lot in English and note down new words and phrases.
What about listening?
Active listening. Really pay attention to how native speakers talk, the rhythm, the intonation, maybe even try mimicking it.
And, crucially, fight the urge to translate everything.
Yes. Avoid over-translating. Focus on thinking in simple, direct English sentences first. And of course, interact with native speakers whenever you can. Get that real-world practice.
Use technology, too. Apps and things.
Leverage technology, absolutely.
Yeah.
Language apps, recording yourself speaking to hear how you sound, interactive tools, create visual reminders, sticky notes on objects with their English names.
Join groups.
Join groups, workshops, community support is huge. Shared learning, practice partners.
And the mindset piece.
Super important. Accept mistakes. They're part of learning, maybe the most important part. And be patient. Be persistent. Rewiring your brain takes time and consistent effort. Set realistic goals.
And there were more advanced strategies, too.
Yeah, building on those foundations. Things like advanced visualization, mentally rehearsing conversations in English, using mind maps in English to connect ideas visually, role-playing scenarios.
Setting up English-only zones or times.
Good one. Creating dedicated immersion periods. Using gamification language apps that feel like games. Deliberate creative writing practice to stretch your expressive skills. Even mindfulness in English, like journaling or affirmations.
So the core message really is, it's doable.
Absolutely. Thinking in English, while it feels like a huge mountain to climb, is a gradual process of brain rewiring. It's achievable. And it unlocks so much new ways to communicate, connect, and even think.
Okay, so let's recap the key takeaways here. The journey from constantly translating to actually thinking in a new language. It's tough, no doubt. But as this personal story shows, it's absolutely possible. It takes consistent effort, smart strategies like immersion, and crucially, being okay with making mistakes along the way.
Right. Mistakes are learning opportunities.
This deep dive into one person's experience gives really valuable, practical methods, things you can use to build that deeper, more intuitive connection with English.
And for you, the learner, this whole story illustrates how focused strategies and just sticking with it can lead to major breakthroughs, not just in language, but in mastering any new skill or area of knowledge.
Yeah, it's about moving beyond just knowing the facts.
To really engaging with it fluently, intuitively, thinking in it.
So here's a final thought for you to chew on. How could consciously shifting your internal monologue or your mental processing in any area you're learning right now, could that accelerate your understanding and mastery?
Interesting question.
What small, consistent steps could you start taking, maybe even today, to begin thinking directly in that new domain, whatever it might be for you?
The journey of learning, expanding how our minds work, it's always ongoing. We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights, some practical tools.
And maybe a bit of inspiration for whatever you're learning next.